the border. We're going to get right to Republican Congressman Randy Forbes of Virginia. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee. He was at yesterday's hearing. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for talking with us. Issa, as we all know, has been a very fierce critic and sometimes a personal attacker of the Attorney General holders. Were you satisfied with what the Attorney General had to say in that testimony yesterday?
But, you know, I think there was a lot of things that came out yesterday that shocked many of us. One of the things is there was a revelation that many of the cabinet secretaries had been summoned not to the White House but to the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee, where they were counseled by Mr. Axelrod as the chief strategist for the Obama administration, by their campaign manager, and also by the executive director of the DNC about what actions they should do, what things they should be saying between now and the election. But what shocked us, we thought the Attorney General was above that, and he acknowledged that he had had meetings with Mr. Axelrod as well. And I think that concerns us because, you know, if anything, the Attorney General's office ought to be above politics, and we found out yesterday that apparently is not true.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that meetings and sometimes just interactions with
Sure.
Axelrod, between the Attorney General and Axelrod. And some of it's described in a book that we were talking to the author, Daniel Kleidman, just the other day. And this is a chunk from the book. Don't ever accuse me of trying to interfere with the operations of the Justice Department, Axelrod warned Holder after confronting him in the hallway. He writes, "I'm not Karl Rove." The two men stood chest to chest. It was like a schoolyard fight. White House staffers caught in the crossfire averted their eyes. And at issue there is allegedly in that scuffle that Axelrod was said to have been trying to influence hiring at the DOJ. What did you think of the testimony on that front involving that particular interaction?
Well, the Attorney General said that Mr. Axelrod had not tried to influence hiring, and so we have to take him at his word on that. I think what concerned most of us is when the Attorney General acknowledged that he was having these meetings with the chief strategist for the Obama campaign, and when you start talking about that, we think there ought to be a little bit of a wall of protection there so that the appearance of impropriety is also given to people across the country.
Here's what he said about some of those meetings. This is the Attorney General, Eric Holder. Listen.
The political dimension to the job that I have as Attorney General. I mean, the reality is that I don't sit up in an ivory tower and just do law enforcement. I am the subject of attacks. I'm a person who was seen by some as pretty controversial, and there are times, or at least there was that time, when I was looking for some help in that regard.
And we know that David Axelrod, who was on TV over the weekend, last weekend, certainly didn't deny it. Here's what he said. Listen.
Eric Holder is a great friend of mine. We actually went to the same high school, so we may have gone chest to chest back in the day. We have a strong relationship. And I'm not going to get into the details of that other than to say I respect him. I obviously never tried to interfere in anything that he did. Never talked to him about a governmental matter or a Justice Department matter in all the years I was in the White House.
I always worry when somebody says, I respect him tremendously and he's a great friend of mine, and then usually a big but follows. But both of them are consistent in saying, listen, what we were discussing was not interfering in any way with the Justice Department. Do you think that there's a version of that that's not true?
Well, no, I'm not disputing their honesty, but what I'm saying is that the Attorney General did not say that. What the Attorney General said when he started his remarks is that he said that the Attorney General's office ought to base all their decisions on facts and the law and nothing else. They were his words. But later on, when we were talking to him, he acknowledged that that was not the case, that he was actually meeting with the top campaign strategist for President Obama, and he talked about the fact that he was being counseled about what to say and things to do and how to handle attacks on him as the Attorney General. And, you know, there are a lot of people he could consult with, but I think as to trying to get even an appearance of impropriety, he ought not to be counseling with the top strategist for the campaign. I think that sends a bad image, especially given all the other things that we see layering on from this administration in terms of the partisanship they have been displaying.
We know that the committee's prepared a contempt citation against Eric Holder, and Congressman Issa has said that they could move on that. Here's what he said.
I believe that the Speaker is close to the end of his rope. I don't expect to go home for 4th of July without having a date for contempt or knowing that it's time to wrap up this investigation.
Would you support that, a date for contempt?
if we can't get the answers that we need, and it's important to recognize it's not just Republicans that want those answers. We've heard from the ambassador of Mexico that this fast and furious operation has done more to poison the relationship between the United States and Mexican people than anything we've seen in 2 administrations. And they're concerned that they haven't received this investigation. We want to make sure that we just get the facts so that we can reach a conclusion and find out what actually happened. And as we mentioned yesterday, it doesn't matter if the Attorney General appears 7 times before the committee. If every time he appears he just says he doesn't know on key questions, and it doesn't matter how many documents he gives us if he doesn't give us the ones we've asked for. And I think what you see with Chairman Issa is he's just getting frustrated that he feels like he's getting stonewalled by the Attorney General and not giving this information.
Congressman Randy Forbes is a Republican from Virginia. Nice to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I want to bring in Daniel